It's so hot. It's so hot. It's the dog days of summer, or at least this used to be the dog days of summer. Here in Texas, anyway, summer extends almost into October, so we're not even to the bad part yet, and I'm already over it. Luckily, I'm gonna be getting out of where I am right now. I'm gonna be going down to South Texas, where it's gonna be worse. But before I get all toasty and sticky, I've got a lightning round video to get to, so let's get to the questions. All right, here comes the boilerplate spiel. If you've never watched this channel before and you don't know what lightning round videos are, they are basically videos where I take questions from Patreon members who support at a certain level. They get to ask questions, I give them answers, and from time to time, we stumble on a very interesting topic that could make its own video. So if any of these really get you going, let me know in the comments. It could be a whole video. All right, first question comes from Sai. He asked, is there any progress on finding another energy source as a baseload? Someone was telling me all about the new solar installations being installed with enough batteries to be considered baseload. So yeah, I know that a lot of states, bluer states, California I'm thinking of specifically, are now requiring any kind of solar installation to have battery backup, which I have on my home, and it's great. I'm a fan of it. But I'm really bullish on geothermal. I would like to talk about geothermal as a baseload power solution that I've covered this before on a video, but it's been quite a while. There's actually been a lot of things that are happening. I probably should make a whole video about this. Because yeah, there's some interesting stuff happening around geothermal. For the super late people who maybe don't know at all what geothermal is, it's basically where you tap into heat energy that is already in the ground. And this is usually in places that are kind of volcanic. Iceland they do a lot of geothermal there. I think there's some geothermal around Yellowstone. Basically places where there's like hot springs coming to the surface. Those are prime opportunities for geothermal. And yeah, in those locations where geothermal is available, where there's heat energy underneath the surface that's easy to tap into, it's a great source of energy. It's clean. It doesn't flood entire valleys like hydro does. There's no waste product whatsoever. It doesn't burn anything. It's a fantastic energy source. The only problem with it is that it's only available in specific places where there just happens to be, really hot water near the surface, and that's only a very small portion of where people live. So yeah, that's always kind of been the Achilles heel of geothermal. It's just not available everywhere. And it's only like 1% of the energy mix globally, so it's still a very, very small component. But something that has happened really just in the last 10 years or so is enhanced geothermal. Bum, 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 bum. So enhanced geothermal basically makes it possible to get geothermal energy anywhere. Like, you don't have to be in those specific hotspots. You could be literally anywhere. And that's because if you drill down far enough anywhere, it gets hot because of pressure. I mean, if you're a mile below the surface, then you have a mile of earth above you pushing down, and that pressure causes heat. So whereas, traditional geothermal is kind of the low-hanging fruit. It's like the places where the heat comes up to the surface. In enhanced geothermal, you go down to the heat. So they basically drill down to where it's hot enough, inject water into it, that water flashes into steam, that steam rises up, and they use that to turn the turbines. Voila, energy. And it kind of works like fracking. They just inject a lot of water into this hot area, and then there's another pipe that takes the steam back up. But there is another way of doing it. They call it closed loop geothermal. Yeah, because kind of the downside of the enhanced geothermal, and we'll get into why it's not as much of a downside as it sounds, but enhanced geothermal, you do have to inject water with a lot of pressure into these spaces to sort of create the space to inject more water so that it flashes into steam, and that requires basically fracking, which is what they do for gas extraction, and there's been a lot of issues around that. But with closed loop geothermal, it's basically like one long pipe that just goes down, goes across, gets heated up, comes back up as steam, and that way you're not injecting water into the ground, you're not having to frack, you're not having to do all that kind of stuff, and you can recycle that water. It just kind of goes around in a closed loop. And there's a type of closed loop geothermal called, well, I don't know if it's called this, but it's kind of like, they use ammonia instead of water because ammonia has a lower boiling point. So you don't have to drill down as far. The temperature difference doesn't have to be as great. The problem is you don't get as much energy out of it because of the mass of ammonia is not quite the same as the mass of water, so you don't get the same amount of force out of it. And all of these kind of fall under the category of advanced geothermal or next generation geothermal. And there's a lot of reasons why I'm so bullish on this, and I think that it's the future of baseload power. Because for one thing, it is baseload power. It's something that could derive power 24 hours a day, regardless of the weather, regardless of any other conditions. It's kind of a limitless source of power as well. Like, you know, the pressure that's creating the heat down there, that's not going to go away. Like, the laws of physics aren't just going to stop working. So it doesn't burn anything, doesn't put gases or chemicals into the atmosphere. It doesn't create any waste, solid, liquid, or whatever. And the carbon footprint is really low over its lifetime. Obviously, it's very front-loaded. Any kind of construction has a carbon footprint, but over its lifetime, it's extremely low. Also, and this is something that you don't hear talked about very much, it has one of the lowest land uses of any kind of energy production. Because you don't need a big, you don't need space, horizontal space. You just go down, and there's nobody living down there, and you're not planting food down there, so. But I think my favorite thing about it, and the reason why I'm most bullish about it, is, and maybe this is just the Texas in me, because I personally know people that work in the oil and gas industry, and there's always this thing in the back of my head that, of course, you want the oil and gas industry to sort of phase itself out and move on to newer technologies, but there's millions of people that work in that industry who would then be without a job, and they're talking about, training them to be able to work on windmills and solar farms and stuff like that, which is fine. But here's why this is better. Geothermal technology kind of piggybacks off of what the oil and gas industry has been doing for the last 100 years. It's drilling. So yeah, all these roughnecks that have been doing oil and gas wells for years can now do geothermal wells. Like, the skill set kind of just applies, you know? Oh no, what dance I'm doing here, what is that? So it's good for an employment reason. Also, You're kind of starting on third base with this technology. You're not having to reinvent the wheel or anything. Like, this stuff kind of already exists, and you can just kind of build on it, which is always a good starting point. Including, by the way, there's talk of repurposing old wells. There's like thousands, probably hundreds of thousands of old discarded oil and gas wells that have been already drilled down to a pretty significant depth, and now they're just sitting there being unused. You could go in there and use those wells that already exist. You're already halfway down to where you need to be, and you can just repurpose those wells and make geothermal out of it. So I've got an article pulled up here from Bloomberg NEF that talks about next generation geothermal technologies. They're heating up. Clever. So right here, I was talking about the land use, how it's so much smaller than all these others. Like, really, nuclear is the only one that has smaller land use intensity. Funny that wind takes up so much. I wouldn't have expected that. And down here, they've got a list of companies that are working on this. There's Evor, however you pronounce it, Fervo Energy, Greenfire Energy. They're talking down here about Evor Technologies commissioned the Evor Deep project in New Mexico. Fervo Energy has an experiment geothermal power plant in Nevada. These are back from 2023. And according to this article, they expect to see more tests and pilot projects thanks to rapidly expanding funding and investments from government and investors. So, I mean, with the new administration coming in, they're not as big on this kind of thing. So the government investment might be going away, but technology investment is going into it quite a bit, because a lot of these AI companies they have all these power issues now with their LLMs and stuff. So they're investing in new nuclear and enhanced geothermal projects like this to power that stuff. And I can't help but notice here that some of the investors in Evor, this company that I was just talking about, include Chevron, BP, BHP. So, I mean, some of these oil and gas companies are realizing the same thing. It's like, oh, we've already done half the work here. We could be reusing these old wells and using the technology we already have and the equipment and resources that we already have, allocate that toward this and be making money off of it. But I'll put that article and a few other articles down in the description. You can go check them out. But yeah, this is a new thing that is starting to catch fire. There's a lot of investment going into it. There's a lot of interest. There's a lot of progress in these technologies that have come through a lot of the gas and oil extraction over the last 10 years. Oh, and by the way, there is a type of geothermal that's being researched that's a little bit outside of where our technology currently exists, but they call it supercritical geothermal. And the idea here is that, the further down you go, the hotter it gets.
That's what she said.
But supercritical geothermal would go way, 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 way down deep where it's like super heated. and you could get a lot more energy out of it. Like the amount of energy is exponential the further down you go. That requires more technology to be able to work in those kind of extreme environments.
Liquid hot magma.
So there's still a ways to go before we could even approach doing that. But if we were able to do it, it literally would be an infinite resource of energy. We could power the entire globe with it. Now, before anybody starts pointing out the cons and they start talking about like the fracking problem and that we're just going to make everything worse when it comes to that, that is the con to this. That's one of the downsides to it. But one of the things that I read was that even the fracking that they do for geothermal is less damaging than the kind of fracking that they did for oil and gas. Because the fracking for oil and gas, specifically gas, means that you got to break up like tons of shale and different layers of rock, entire layers of rock down below. You got to like break all that up to get the gas out of it. You're not really going for that with geothermal. You're kind of just creating a little space, a little cavern underneath. So it's not as intense, the fracking is, and also once the water is pumped in, it's kind of kept at a constant pressure, so that keeps it from shifting and causing like earthquakes and stuff like that, which have been caused by these fracking events. So I'm bullish on it. I'm hoping that we'll see more progress on this. They're saying that it's possible the U.S. could have like a quarter of its energy needs met by like 2050 if we get on the stick here, and I would like to see that happen. So yeah, when it comes to geothermal, I say drill, baby, drill. But only with geothermal, otherwise. All right, next question. Brian Beswick asked, "Hey Joe, on behalf of our AI overlords, have you ever started researching a topic expecting one conclusion only to be completely surprised by what you found?" I'm not sure what this question has to do with the AI overlords, but okay. So, this is not the answer you want, but honestly, there's a small level of that probably with every single video that I make. Literally every topic that I research, there's some little surprise that pops up that I didn't see coming. Sometimes that makes it a lot more interesting. Sometimes it simplifies it in ways that I wasn't expecting. I think it actually happened a lot more early on the channel when I was dumber back then. Dumber meaning I hadn't researched as many of these topics as I had before. So everything that I researched, especially when it got into like quantum stuff, it was always like, whoa! I was also a lot more woo-woo back then, as we all know. I used to like go into these like woo-woo topics and then it's like, oh, there's a perfectly rational explanation for this. Okay. But if you wanted me to point out specific videos, there's two videos that I can specifically point to that like I really thought I understood something and or it just completely reshaped the way I look at the world. The one that I point out the most is the spice trade video, which is actually named like the deadliest company of all time because it was about the Dutch East India Company. But it started as a video about the Dutch East India Company and it became a video about the spice trade. And the reason why that one blew my mind was like there were all these connections that got made while I was researching it that I was like, oh, the spice trade explains literally everything in the world today. Man, my plant's really dancing today, isn't it? That might be more entertaining than me. So like something I love to point out to people, because this just blew my mind when I realized it, and maybe it's because I didn't study history hard enough, but like the fall of Constantinople to the Ottomans was in 1453. Can you think of another important date that happened in the late 1400s? Especially if you're an American, you're probably thinking 1492 when Columbus came over, sailed the ocean blue, all that stuff. Well, the reason Columbus went that direction was because, frankly, of the fall of Constantinople, because that was a major trade route for the spice trade through the Bosphorus Strait. And once that got shut down by the Ottomans that came in and took over, or they started like policing the activities there a lot more so than the Europeans wanted, they were trying to find another way to get that glorious spice. And at that point, the only other way of getting there was going all the way around Africa, which seemed ridiculous. So they're like, hey, what if we just go that way? And then Columbus accidentally discovered America, thinking he was going to go all the way into the Indies. But it was the spices that they did that for. Spices were basically like a currency. They were something that had value, just because we decided it had value. And that's just one example. I could go, I mean, that video really shook me up. I was just like, oh my God, all of this is explained by the spice trade. The reason New York became New Amsterdam is because of the spice trade. You go watch the video, it's all explained there. And the other one, and I've always been really proud of this video, it was the one on H.H. Holmes, who was considered America's first serial killer. Although there's also the Hart brothers, which I've also done a video on, that was back in colonial days. They're considered the first serial killers in America. But H.H. Holmes was in the late 1800s during the Columbian Exposition in Chicago. They called it the White City. There was a whole book called The Devil in the White City. If you don't know the story, the legend, the story, that if you have ever heard of H.H. Holmes, this is what you heard, is that he had a murder castle that he built in Chicago, specifically to time with this Columbian Exposition. So when people came in from out of town, they would go stay in his hotel, and he murdered them. It was apparently a hotel that had all these secret passageways, and they had like gas lines into the rooms, so he could literally just gas people and kill them in their rooms while they're sleeping. There was a torture basement where he would take people down there and rip them apart. They were like, there's untold countless numbers of people that stayed at this hotel and died because of H.H. Holmes. It's a great story, and it is not true. Like, literally, you watch any other H.H. Holmes video on YouTube, and it will tell you this legend. But my writer, Ryan, did some deep research on this, and we double-checked, triple-checked everything, and it turns out, like, this story, this legend that we all hear about H.H. Holmes, it's actually not true. Don't get me wrong. He was a psychopath, and he did murder plenty of people. But he was really more of like a con man, and he did build this hotel with all these weird rooms and secret passages and stuff, but it was really sort of to like hide away his illegal stolen scam goods. Like, he didn't build the hotel to kill people, he built the hotel so he could hide all of his various grifts. But the actual story of what happened with H.H. Holmes is actually really fascinating. He actually had like 3 different families, and they were traveling across the country, and he winds up murdering good like 15, 20 people. Don't get me wrong, the guy was bad. But the actual story is like way more complicated, which I think is why the legend lives on a lot more easily, because guy builds murder castle to kill people is a really fascinating story, whereas, weird grifter travels around with people and murders them. It's a lot more messy. But I love the video because we're the only people that I know of that have really covered it in that way. Like I said, if you look at any other video on YouTube about H.H. Holmes, they still tell the legend, which is fine and it's fun. But working on that video, again, big thanks to Ryan, my writer, who did all the work on that. I mean, like, that totally changed what I thought was true about that story. So that stands out to me as a video that had a conclusion I was not expecting. I'll link both of them down below. Go watch them. They're amazing. The guy who does them he's really cool. All right, next question. JD Creeper asked, if the current conflicts went nuclear, what would the future look like for life on Earth? How would humanity adapt to this? Would a mass extinction occur? What creatures would evolve into existence? So, a lot of questions. So, you say the current conflict's going nuclear. There's not a lot of nuclear weapons amongst countries that are currently involved in like active conflicts. So I would say that it would be minimal at best. But I did do this. I did cover this in a video a while back. I actually looked at what would happen if every nuclear weapon on Earth went off at the same time. And I did it from several different angles. It was like, what if every country launched their nuclear weapons at once? What if all the nuclear weapons blew up right where they were in their silos? What if you piled them all in one spot? What would happen? Again, I'll link to that video down below. It goes into all the excruciating details of it. This is the 4th of my own videos that I've referenced so far in this video. I think I'm officially just a snake eating its own tail at this point, which is fine because that's the whole internet right now. There's nothing in this mug. So the short version is right now there's around 25,000 or so nuclear weapons on planet Earth, with most of them being in the United States and Russia. I think, 90% of the nuclear weapons that currently exist are in those 2 countries. But if they all went off at the same time, humanity would survive. We would probably lose maybe about half of our population. Not good. Don't get me wrong. It'd be a bad day and an even worse next 10 to 20 years or something like that, but we would survive. So in the video I compared it to some massive volcano eruptions like Tambora and Krakatoa. Both of those were quite a bit less of an impact than what all of the nuclear weapons going off would do, but if you compare it to like the Chicxulub crater, the Chicxulub impact, it's like way less. So again, don't get me wrong, it's bad, nobody wants that to happen. We certainly don't want that to happen, but it wouldn't be an extinction level event for humans or for other animals for that matter. All right, Mark Hoffman asked, in your humble opinion, what do you think of the deadliest creatures on Earth? And more to the point, why are they cats? Mark, I don't need to have an opinion on this. I have Wikipedia. But yeah, according to Wikipedia, you're pretty close to right. Cats are actually the fourth deadliest, most successful hunters in the animal kingdom. So the third is the African wild dog, which it hunts in packs, so that's kind of cheating. The second is the harbor porpoise, which they're social animals, they probably hunt in packs, so that's also cheating. And the number one is the dragonfly with a whopping 95% kill rate, which is insane. But its whole head is eye, so that's cheating. So by my unassailable logic, yes, cats are the deadliest animal in the world, with 60% kill rate, 12% higher than the great white shark. But not just any cat, there is one specific species of cat that stands out above all the others. An absolute killing machine that lays waste to whole populations of prey in a world of man-eaters like lions and tigers and 50-mile-per-hour cheetahs. What great cat species stands out above the rest? What is the deadliest cat in the animal kingdom? This guy. So the black-footed cat is this tiny cat from southern Africa that kind of looks like Nermal from Garfield. And when I say small cat, I don't mean like house cat small. I mean smaller. They're smaller than house cats. They measure only about 14 to 20 inches long, that's 36 to 52 centimeters, stands about 8 inches tall, that's 20 centimeters, and weighs between 2 and 6 pounds, which is 1 to 3 kilograms. Like, they look like kittens. Like you know how young animals are like especially adorable, but then as they get older, they kind of like grow out of the adorable phase. It's like they never really grew out of the adorable phase. They just stayed adorable. They just forgot to grow up. But yeah, because they're so small and they're so light, they can move really quickly, they can move very silently, they can jump really far, several times their body length, and because of that, they are these insane predators. They apparently have 3 different types of hunting, according to some articles that I have, and a link down below. They've got fast hunting, where they kind of like bound through the grasses. They're grassland cats, but they bound through the grasses. That kind of like stirs the prey, the rodents and the birds. It gets them to kind of, run out of there, and then they can chase them down and catch them. Another one is called stalking and weaving, where they kind of like walk really slowly and like, anyway, they stalk their prey. And then they have what they call still hunting, which is basically they've got this ridiculous amount of patience where they'll just like sit outside a rodent hole for hours, just like ready to go. And as soon as the rodent like pops its head up, it's just like, they got it. But it says that in one night, black-footed cats can kill between 10 and 14 rodents or small birds. It basically kills an animal every 50 minutes. It says that one black-footed cat can kill 3,000 rodents a year. Good God, man. But here's the deal, they kind of have to. Apparently small predators, and including the Blackfoot cat, they've got what they call accelerated metabolisms because they're so small and they got so much energy going on. It's kind of like the hummingbird, like they have to constantly be feeding to maintain their metabolism. And in the case of the black-footed cat, that means hunting. And that's how they were able to achieve this like 60% kill rate. So there you go, you're not wrong. Cats are one of the deadliest creatures on the planet, but this specific, stupidly adorable cat is the most deadly of all. It's wild. All right, Fishtail asked, if we watch all your videos at 2x speed, does that affect your videos' watch hours? Well, Fishtail, like most YouTubers, I have no idea what the algorithm wants, but I happen to know, personally, a guy named Todd Beaupre, who is kind of the algorithm expert at YouTube. I happened to be on a Discord server with him, and I asked him this question. So here's what he had to say straight from the mouth of the guy who knows the best. So I got a quick answer for you. I asked him this question, and he said, we look at both actual time spent as well as video completion. And then I said, oh, okay, so it's a little bit of both, and he gave a thumbs up. So how exactly that weighs, I'm not sure. I know that when I watch a lot of a channel's videos in one day, or if I watch one big, long video from a channel in one day, that I'll suddenly start getting a lot of recommendations for that channel the next day. I've always thought that it's a little bit of a proportion of the time that you spend on YouTube watching something. Now, that might be diminished a little bit by the speeding up and watching it fast, but it looks like they do sort of counter it by actually counting how much of a video that you watch. So there's different metrics of the algorithm, and it looks like it kind of feeds both of them in there. So I guess ultimately the reason you're asking that is like if you are in a hurry and you're watching my videos at 2x speed, does that screw things up for you? I would say no. I think it would still probably keep referring my videos to you because you watched the length of the video. That's my assumption. All right, we got one more question, but first I need to bless the new Patreons and channel members with the spirit of Zoe. So let's get to that real quick. We got some new people to shout out. We've got Ken J. Burkhart, Rob Moore, K. Dizzle for Shizzle, Lyndon Marsh, Michael Obi, Garrett Flatton, Gregory Bell, Ken Steep from McCann Dog Training. Good to see you there, Ken. Grizzly Winters, Melinda Fiddler, Debbie Short, Isabel Ende, Lucky Finch, Gary Singman, Angelique Fouquet, Anna Byangalb, and Dripping Wax. And for new members, we've got CJ, Brian White, Mark Brown, Zilivis Baskus, Jen Fur, Charles Floor, Ikari Mel, Jenner Bobby, good lord, Christopher Stafford, Tammy Renner, Catherine Mintz, Justin O'Neill, Michelle Stewart, might be someone I know, Maximum Effort, Mark Zabo, Just Call Me B, and G Rad. Thank you guys so much for signing up, and if you would like to join them, just click the little join button down below, or you can go to my Patreon, which will be on screen right now, and you can join an awesome community, get early access to videos, you get like a little thing by your name if you're a channel member in the comments that make you stand out a little bit, and of course it helps support this channel and makes you an awesome human being, so thank you guys for doing so. All right, and our last question goes to Rafe Zero Humor Singer, who asked, lions and tigers and panthers, oh my, there are plenty of big cats around the world, but no big dogs. Why? Okay, first of all, was that supposed to rhyme? Are you Dr. Seuss? Did you do a Dr. Seuss on me? Also, we keep coming back to cats and dogs in this thing. So I actually just saw a really great video, somewhat on this topic, that Minute Earth did recently. I'll link it down below, but it basically talks about the lineage of dogs and all the different types of canines in the world, from foxes to wild dogs and whatnot. Kind of explains how they came about a little bit. And it turns out there used to be large dogs, just like there used to be giant sloths and giant mastodons and that kind of thing. But there used to be a giant dog that was called the Epicyon, and it was the size of a grizzly bear. I don't know if it was the goodest boy, but it was a big boy. So much like a lot of other animals, there used to be giant versions of dogs that existed. Why it went away is probably similar to the same reason that all the other animals, large versions of it, went away. What I think is interesting is that, of course, we domesticated dogs and we bred them to have all different types of form factors, including Great Danes and Irish Wolfhounds, which are ridiculously huge, way bigger actually than any wild dogs in nature. So if you were to look at like what's the biggest dog in the world right now, it would be something that we created. Which, by the way, there is a dog named Zeus that's a Great Dane that is taller than Shaquille O'Neal when standing on its hind legs, which means it's over 7 feet tall. And I'll bet you anything, it always wants to be in someone's lap. I kind of feel like dogs are like the corn of animals. I know, hang on, I'll get there. Because like if you look at corn, like where corn came from, the plant that corn used to be before we, domesticated it, became agricultural about it, and it just like changed it over time. Like it doesn't look anything like corn now. It just has like a couple of little kernels on it. It looks more like wheat, really. And dogs are the same thing, like they used to kind of come in one standard size, and then we came in and decided, hey, here's an animal that can help us out, and it decided that we were an animal that could feed it, and we became this weird duo, one of the most successful pairings of two different species in the history of life on Earth. And we changed dogs into these many different types of dogs that we have today, even completely ridiculous ones, like that guy. Now, I imagine because most wild dogs, coyotes, wolves, African wild dogs, they hunt in packs. As I mentioned earlier with the cat thing, like the wild dog actually is a little bit above the black-footed cat, but it hunts in packs. So I imagine just as a survival mechanism, hunting in packs made more sense than just growing really big and trying to hunt down animals that way. So it just made more sense for dogs to get smaller and hunt in packs. Whereas cats are a bit more solitary. So cats, could have been bigger, and then maybe that helped them to take down prey a bit more. I'm kind of talking out of my ass. I don't know this specifically, but that's my theory. But yeah, we have genetically altered dogs over tens of thousands of years to become all these different variants of dogs that they are today. And we're even starting to go back and de-extincting old species of dogs that have died out. That made some news back in April that a company right here in Dallas called Colossal Biosciences, they sort of de-extincted the dire wolf. You remember this? Yeah, they basically took a gray wolf and manipulated its genes. So we've officially graduated from just breeding animals and genetically changing them in that way over multiple generations to just straight up going in and changing their DNA and turning them into something else. So yeah, you can see from this CNN article from back in April, these were the dire wolf puppies that were born here in Texas, and there's a lot of controversy around it. Like, do they really qualify as dire wolves because they were like 99.9% gray wolf, that they just kind of like tweaked the genome a little bit based off of some DNA that they found on old dire wolves from back in the day? I'll put a link to this CNN article down below, but they kind of talk about in this article that it does get a little bit philosophical. Like, does it 100% match the DNA of an old dire wolf? No. But does it have the phenotype of an old dire wolf, meaning that it had the same physical features? Yeah, quite possibly it does. So, I mean, yeah, it gets into a little bit of philosophy. I mean, we share like 50% of our genome with bananas. So are we part banana? Are we fully human? So yeah, the whole direwolf thing was pretty controversial. A lot of debate around it and whatnot. But, you know, cloning and de-extinction of animals in general is a pretty controversial topic. I know because I've done videos on this and you've told me. Like, genetic manipulation in general is a pretty controversial topic for a lot of reasons, and not the least of which is that, well, there have been some shenanigans involved in genetic research. Don't get me wrong, I am pro-science, I am pro the scientific process, I am pro-scientists, but these scientists are human, and they're part of organizations that have monetary incentives to get things published, which of course can lead to papers that are filled with lots of mistakes, if they're rushing it out, or worse, just falsified information, which is exactly what happened at a lab at MIT in 1986. So they were basically, they were modifying DNA in mice to see if they could basically get the mice to produce certain antibodies for various diseases and whatnot. And the pressure was on to publish, people got greedy, and it led to one of the biggest scientific scandals of the 20th century. A scandal that actually kind of changed scientific establishment and procedures as we know it. Some people actually call it scientific Watergate. And you have probably never heard of it. But it's a fascinating story that a buddy of mine covered. He runs a channel called Bobby Broccoli, which you should be following. He's amazing. But he did a feature documentary on this story called 17 Pages, where he tells the entire story of this scandal. He uses archival footage. He pulled congressional testimony off the records. He even found and interviewed the people involved. This was a huge project for him. He did a fantastic job on it. In fact, he actually used his real name for it, which is Kevin McKay. That's how serious he was about it. But anyway, I highly recommend it. Definitely go check it out. It's worth watching. I think you'll like it. And you can find it exclusively on Nebula. So people ask me all the time whether it's better to watch my stuff on YouTube or Nebula. And honestly, I tend to say Nebula because, yeah, I post the same videos there that I post here. But they're also not the same videos because I take out the ad reads and I replace them with something. It's an extra segment that you don't see on YouTube. I call it Nebula Extra Facts.
Nebula Extra Facts!
Yeah, you know that jingle if you watch on Nebula. I also post on Nebula early, a week early if possible, so you can see my videos earlier than everybody else. And I'm just one of like 200 creators doing special stuff on Nebula that you can't see anywhere else, up to and including original series and feature films like Kevin did with 17 Pages. Or my Mysteries of the Human Body series, which you can only see there. And coming soon, a TV series that I can't announce yet, unfortunately. But I just spent 2 weeks in New York last month shooting an episode for it. It was a big deal, professional crew, professional cast. Can't wait to share it. But for me as a creator, that's what's so great about Nebula. It gives people like me a chance to kind of level up, you know, and make the kind of stuff that's always been a little bit out of reach. So yeah, I mean, signing up for Nebula helps me in a major way. But for you, as a viewer, that means a curated collection of videos from your favorite creators, ad-free and early, with exclusive content you can't find anywhere else. And if you use my link in the description, or just scan this handy QR code here, you'll get 40% off your annual subscription. Which brings it to $36 a year, or just $3 a month. You probably drank coffee this morning that costs more than that. It's a great deal for great service, it helps out creators like me, and it's the only place to see 17 Pages, which is reason enough. So scan the code, click the link, and see what all the fuss is about. I think you'll enjoy it. And that's it for today. You guys, thanks for watching. Thanks for the questions from the Patreon people. If you have a burning question that you would like to get asked, that's how you get it. Go into Patreon, find the right tier, and do the thing. I hope you guys are all having a great summer. Stay cool, stay hydrated, take care of yourselves. In the meantime, you guys go out there, have an eye-opening rest of the week, stay safe. I'll see you next Monday. Love you guys, take care.